Alright everybody, welcome back to another episode of PlanetCoaster 2, episode 10 now. My name is Lucius, or Luck, whichever one works, whichever one is fine. So yeah, it's been a couple weeks since the last episode, but, you know, you can't rush art, okay? You can't rush quality. So what happens when I make you guys wait a couple weeks, and then the quality is not good? My bad, bro. Anyways, today we're gonna add a new ride. It's been maybe 3-4 episodes now since we actually added a new ride to our theme park, which, you know, pacing wise, that's not very good. But this is a very high effort ride, okay? It's pretty high budget for the park anyway. But that's, you know, with good reason, because it is right off the end of the main street. It's meant to be viewed from all directions additionally, so I had to put extra effort into it and make sure it looks good from all angles. And our ride of choice today is the teacups. And why did I choose the teacups? That is because I feel like generally there's a big like family attraction close to the entrance of the park. Maybe it's for ease of access or whatnot, but I kind of wanted to follow that. Like if you think of Epic Universe, there's the Constellation Carousel right in the middle of the park. It's one of the first things you see. What's another park? Six Flags Great America. The carousel is right in the front. Oh, I guess it's just a lot of carousels. Maybe I could have done with doing a carousel. I want it to be different. So teacups it is. And this teacups is very heavily themed. But themed to what? I haven't thought about that yet, actually. If you saw from the intro, I teased the sign a little bit. It's called Starlight Saucers. And I know the name, okay, it sounds like we have Stardust Racers at home. And then Stardust Racers at home, it's this, right? That's what it sounds like, but hear me out, okay? Last episode, we made the Starlight Manor, right? The Starlight Manor gift shop. And so I was like, okay, this gift shop needs a ride connected to it. Of course, it doesn't actually need to have one, but I thought, why not, you know? So I connected a ride to that. And since I already named the gift shop, I wanted to have a similar name in the ride. And for that reason, I wanted to keep the Starlight prefix or pre-name, whatever. So Starlight Manor, Starlight what? It's teacups, so Starlight Saucers. Right? Because they're like saucers, you know? You get it? And like saucers because it's like space, outer space. Maybe the story is that the people in this area use these saucers to travel in between planets or in between stars or something like that. Maybe, but that's as much thought as I put into the theme, other than the name having to do with astronomy. And I don't know. Does it make sense? Why not? It's a theme. It's a game, bro. Chill. Relax. Okay. So anyways, into the actual build, I'm using almost exclusively the sorcery DLC. And, you know, if this is the type of DLC that they're going to release, then I'm all for it. If you wanted to, you could make an entire park only using the sorcery DLC, and it probably would not look stale. That's a pretty bold statement, but it's so good. There's multiple types of walls, everything's almost recolorable, there's good general shapes, and most importantly, there are a lot of non-gridded pieces. Actually, that's not even that important now because you can rotate gridded objects now, which is a game changer, honestly. And you're gonna see me use that feature pretty soon right here across this buttress. So as far as inspiration for this build, I loosely followed some, you know, gothic ideas and whatnot, right? Like the spires, the adornments, the flying buttresses, towers, you know, basic gothic stuff, right? But then for some reason I was just building, and then I got like inspired to just let the creativity fly, you know? Why not let it fly? So I was just having fun, honestly. And anytime you can play a game and have fun, that's a win, you know? So regardless of how realistic this looks, I had fun making it. And that's what truly matters. Yeah, I mean, because you saw from the last buildings, the last episode, right? I generally follow real life buildings pretty closely, so being able to build something like completely freestyle and say that's 100% my idea, it felt pretty good. And if this looks whack to you, you're probably like, yeah, that's 100% your idea. That's horrible. And you might be right. You know, this makes no sense. The structure makes no sense. 3 flying buttresses over a central tower that's on top of a bunch of teacups probably doesn't make that much sense. And you know what? There's actually going to be 6 flying buttresses. Yeah. It makes even less sense now. But still, I really enjoy this addition to the park. It looks over the top, and that's exactly what this park is, if you haven't been able to tell yet. And now I'm testing all the movers, and I cut it out, but I also make some rotating platforms that go over top in the teacups. You may have seen in the intro cinematic, but I'll show it in the live section right after this as well. And for that reason, I'm building this part in a separate world with way less pieces, just because I don't want my room to get hot. You know, if I were to build this in the main park and using the movers and whatnot, I'd have to unpause it, and then my PC would get hot. And I can still hit like maybe not 60, like 50 FPS, which is playable. It's definitely doable, but it's really uncomfortable for me, so it's a no-brainer. I was like, let's do it in my testing world. So that's why it says Merlin type park at the bottom. Yeah, so along with the main buttress structures going over top, I also decided to use these ironworking cages. So these are actually from the base game. Actually, they're from PlanetCoaster 1, just recolored to look like iron. And they look pretty good. They're very detailed, maybe too visually noisy to look at times. But I clean it up a lot in the final part. So however messy it looks now, it's not how it looks at the end. This was filmed a long time ago. This was like a couple days after the Gothic pack released. So that means it's taken me a long time. I don't even want to estimate how long this has taken me. But yeah, things are looking good. Now we're in the main park, and now I have to fit that monstrosity into the main street. And this main street area, I was kind of like skeptical on how I was gonna get it to work with the elevation and the way it opens up at the end, but this is like a perfect conclusion to the street, I think. It's got large swooping paths, but also like tiered paths too, so it's not just a sea of gray that theme parks often do. Maybe not theme parks, but amusement parks often do that, where it's just a big sheet of concrete that you walk across, or asphalt, and that's the whole path. But this is broken up into 2, maybe you can classify it as 2.5 tiers, because those like rounded paths in the center right there, they have a small landing in the center, so maybe 3 levels of topography. Topography, is that even the right word? There's 3 height levels that you can be on, and I try to play with sightlines a lot so that it feels much larger than it actually is. And I messed around with trees a lot too, creating shade but also making things feel like a jungle. So the result you'll see in a couple minutes here, that it's pretty intimate feeling, but vast, which is a feeling I try to accomplish a lot in this park. Because of the scale of it, it just has to be a large park. But when you have like massive things in your park, it kind of loses that charm. So making things feel as intimate as possible was one of the main goals for this area. And that's why this queue is so tightly packed and close to the ride. Well, partly because it's like that in real life, so realism reasons, but also, you know, footprint and all. And that was another issue with this ride. You know, these flat rides, they have such massive footprints. I mean, look at that. So I had to try to make it work. And I totally forgot that there's a trick from one of Taggy's videos where you can use the flume platform to, I guess, kind of delete the ride platform. And that's what I ended up doing, which I'll show you later. But a lot of this was built before I used that trick. So this ride is just actually way bigger than it needed to be. But I made it work with a lot of backstage areas. And this little thing right here, you see, where I'm like making the extended queue and then reconnecting it to the main queue. Don't do that, because if you do, peeps will not be able to find your queue. See right there? Even though they're not technically connected, they look connected, but the peeps think they're connected and they're like, how do I find the queue? There's like 4 different entrances. And then they can't ride the ride. And it took me a while to figure that out, and I was kind of crashing out. I was like, why can no one ride the ride? So if you're ever having that issue, it's usually the queues. But yeah, the time lapse is over. Let's hop into the live. Okay, we're in the park now, and here is the finalized structure. She's quite a looker, ain't she? So this is what the flat ride structure does look like. I ended up making a spire in the center, and it's got a lot of weird greebling details, like there's a gargoyle upside down right in the center right there, which if you zoom in, right, it's not that, it doesn't make that much sense. But the effect is from back here, right? Observing from back here, you see the details, and it helps create a cohesive look with all of the ornate iron working around. And as you can see, I made my own sign with those iron pieces. I made a custom font that says Starlight Saucers, and it's somewhat difficult to read, I'm not gonna lie, but I put, what is that, 2-3 layers of black fencing behind it so that the white metal stands out. Heading down into the actual plaza area, this is the look I was going for, with sort of like terraced planters in a way. You see there's different levels. And then in the middle of each winding section, some acacia trees for shade. These 2 paths, they serve as accessibility ramps, because I do have stairs everywhere else to get down. And speaking of accessibility, here is the accessibility entrance. I've still got to do some details here, but it's right next to the exit of the ride. If you can't tell by that, that's where the edge of the ride platform is, which means technically people can't walk here because it's part of the ride, but I tried to work it into the path to make it like a seamless transition as best I could. Now this is the actual entrance to the ride, where the queue starts, and you can see the sign is pretty similar to the previous one over on Starlight Manor. This is what the completed extended queue looks like. In real life, this would probably be used to hold like 40 more minutes of guests on like a busy day, something like that. And making our way to the regular section of the queue, I've just put this covering over it, again with the brown metal pieces to resemble ironworking, and the goal here was to create a covered, shaded queue. Within the far buttress, I've hidden a facility. This has a door on the outside because in here is the ride operator booth. Again, some facilities outside it, the emergency shutoff, as well as some electrical switches. Inside, it's pretty magical looking with all of the colored lighting, the stars in the ceiling, and the ornate details in the flooring as well as the walls. Within this final buttress is the utility room. So on the left side, you have another shutoff switch, an electrical box, and the main electrical component as well. And within this structure is just the actual power generator for the ride. On the right side is a door to access that area, as well as another emergency shutoff. And this just opens up to the main path. Here you can see where I deleted the ride footprint. Let's say I take this part up, right? You see that's where the path was cut. I made it work for the other parts of the ride, but this part was just too big, so I had to remove it in order to get a better look with the cliff face right here. Notably, the symbols in the roof have been replaced with these 3 constellations, those being the Cancer, Leo, and Libra constellations. Now it's time to flesh out the other side of the main street. Okay, well, time-lapse 2 now. Now we're working on a building I called the observatory. And, well, if we call last building Starlight Saucers, if we call that a creative jump, well, then this one is a creative skydive, because I have somehow managed to combine steampunk with gothic in an industrial theme, which, I mean, it works. Maybe this is the only place it could ever work contextually, because it's a pretty funky building, but I've never seen anything like it, and I'm super proud. But man, this was a long way to get there. So here I am starting off with this kind of atrium area, and this is going to be the main dining area of the restaurant. It's supposed to be like a greenhouse, which I don't know how that plays into the whole industrial / steampunk or gothic settings, right? Maybe it's more gothic, right? There can be gothic greenhouses and glass dome structures and whatnot, but I just thought it was pretty cool. And the idea for this glass window structure using those Viking wall hanging pieces as the decorations in the window frames, I got that from a creator called Jude Lindquist, the creator of Volcania 1886, I think. I will link that whole project in the description, because I recommend everyone to check that out and just walk through, because you'll get a lot of really good ideas in there. So all credit to them for this idea of using those pieces. For this building, we're using that structure as a restaurant. And this building was actually something I put way too much effort into. I didn't just start creating this actually in game, which I usually do, for most of my buildings that ends up being the first step, is to just create the sight lines and the shape with the walls like I'm doing right now. Before this, I actually, believe it or not, took some pencil and paper and I actually drew up a loose sketch or diagram of what I wanted the building to look like. And that way I could kind of easily figure out where I wanted things to be and make sure I had enough space for the interior as well. And admittedly, yeah, I could have done that in the game, but there's something about just writing it down and actually sketching it out that really gives me like a nostalgic or even novelty feeling with this building. So this is by far my favorite building in the whole park thus far. Maybe ever in any of my creative games I've played. This is probably my favorite building. And here's the sketch. I'll put it on the screen now. You can see it kind of taking shape, and after I built it, I definitely changed it. It deviated a lot from the sketch, but that happens, you know, as you transfer things from Medium. Some things don't work geometrically, and so you just have to adapt. That was good enough for me. As long as I had the initial sketch, the guidelines in, I could fill in the rest with the planet coaster pieces. Well, now we're building the main telescope tower, and this kind of sparked the whole idea for the theme of the observatory. You know, you use the telescope to observe things. So I felt like I needed something to transition on the left side of the main street. I needed to transition into the first themed area that's going to be in that space off to the left you see in the background. And that area, I was thinking steampunk, but we'll see what I end up going with in terms of architectural direction for that area. But at the time I was thinking steampunk, so I needed a building to go from steampunk, or from the Gothic area to the steampunk area, and this building kind of does both. A lot of it I cut out of the time lapse because this is a very, very, very long time lapse. It's like 20 something minutes condensed, and before I cut everything out and sped it up, this was like 14 hours of footage. So yeah, this building is not to be taken lightly, and it has over 8,000 pieces all together if you count the custom tables and the interior, the kitchen props and stuff, the bar props. If you count all that, it has over 8,000 pieces. So I can't really make it into a blueprint unless you're okay with me omitting all of that stuff. But then it would just be an empty building with no interior. But the outside would look cool, so maybe you want the outside, you want to look at the outside. Let me know if you want a blueprint for that. But these tables here, I used them in the last episode, and I hadn't found the original creator, but I have found them now, and I will link them in the description. As well as every other piece from every creator I used. It will all be in the description below, and I used a lot. All I did here was make the walls and the building and the structure, but the interior stuff was mostly from the workshop. And you know, there's some really talented people out there on the workshop. You just gotta look for it. Right now we're working on the kitchen part of the restaurant, and to be fair, and in all honesty, I should have definitely looked up what a professional, like, industrial grade kitchen looks like and how it's laid out, because with the space I had available, I just kind of I just threw in everything that should exist in the kitchen without really considering, you know, the workflow. Like, usually they have stations, like there's a prep station, there's a cook station, and then there's like a finishing station, right? And like drinks or cleaning station, like stuff like that. They have different stations, and it's supposed to go in like a cohesive loop, right? So there's no one like crossing paths with other people that could lead to like a collision in the kitchen, and it should be like ordered, controlled chaos, right? But I just kind of threw everything in here, and if you don't look too closely, it looks good. But there's that next level of detail that I didn't quite dive into, and maybe next time, next restaurant, next interior, we'll fully consider all of that. But for right now, my first like full kitchen, I think I did okay. How it looks in the time lapse is, I wouldn't say it's too different from how it is now, but I did change a lot of stuff and also added a lot of hanging industrial looking things from the ceiling just to add more clutter, because it looks really good with all of the clutter and stuff. And as you can see outside in that open grass field, I just amassed a bunch of kitchen and food related objects from the workshop, and I'll link them in the description, and I'll link the codes in the description, like I said. So if you want to find any of these things, it'll all be there. Here I'm making some like plates and stuff. This is something I made original, so I'm proud of this. I used the text hashtag on the bottom of the sack to make it look like, you know, the grill hash marks, like a grilled chicken breast or something. That I'm really proud of that. That was all me. Unless someone has done that first, that I didn't see that. So yeah, okay. And these are the final details of the kitchen, is throwing in the garbage cans and any other minor detail that needs to be in there. I did add the smoke effects for the stove, and actual, like, looks like they're cooking and stuff. And there's a trick, it's not included in the time lapse, but I'll show you in the live section, where if you disconnect the path that the restaurant like contains or consists of, so that meaning you see all the path that all the restaurant items are on, if that path is isolated, meaning it's not connected to any other path, any staff members you place on that path will not move. And so if you place a staff member and they walk in a certain direction, once you pick them up, they're locked in that angle, and then you can place them in the kitchen. and they will stand exactly where you place them and not move. They won't even change angle. So knowing that, if you place a bunch of staff members and have them walk around until you get the right angles, you can place them in different sections of the kitchen, and like it looks like there's a bunch of staff in the kitchen working different stations. But you know, if you look too closely, they're just standing still, not even doing anything. So that's another one of those things where you just can't look too close. But you color all of their clothing white, and it's almost like it's a kitchen with like a bunch of chefs. One thing I'd really like to see is the ability to change the attire of some staff members. Like, I know that would be very difficult to implement. Maybe it wouldn't even be that difficult. Like, let's say there's another tab on the employee when you click on them, and it's for the uniform, and you can choose like headwear, you know, upper wear, lower wear, and shoes. Because right now you can just change the color, but that's it. But let's say you want to add a chef's hat, and then they'll all, and long pants, and then they'll all look like chefs, right? Small things like that would be pretty cool. And then you can have like themed staff for different areas. Like, they already programmed these staffing zones, so why not additionally allow us to have the staff that are programmed to specific zones also be dressed in specific attire. I don't know, that'd be pretty cool, right? So you have like a sci-fi themed area, and then all of your staff are dressed like astronauts or something cool, right? More immersion. These are things that you can't actually do. These are things that like the devs have to do, because there's a lot of like nitpicky things that they can't add. But if you try hard enough with the custom scenery and stuff, you can do it yourself. But the staff thing, that's something the devs are gonna have to do because of the fact that they're like dynamic and they move. Yeah, that was a long tangent. Now we're gonna work on the exterior. One of the signature looks for this building is probably the half-domed windows. So you see right here, I'm making the first one with the glass pieces and the thin metal pieces used as a frame, window frame. And if you remember when I made my first interior with the before the glass was even in the game, you can see my building has gotten way better. Just by this, if you compare those windows to these windows, like admittedly, yeah, there was no glass back then, but effectively it's the same. It's the same thing. I just got better. Here's that window, and along with that brick, this is again the sorcery brick, or the townhouse brick from the sorcery pack. And like I said earlier, the sorcery pack has all the tools to be self-sufficient. Like, you could build a whole park with this stuff. You can barely even tell that this is from the sorcery theme. It's just, it looks like it belongs in the game. It looks like it launched with the game. Now is the final part of the time lapse, where we are going to work on the main telescope. And this was very fun to do because, as you can see, I'm actually building the mechanism for controlling the pitch and the yaw of the telescope, but I didn't actually control that. Like, they're not connected to movers or anything, so they're not going to rotate, but you can see how it would work, right? The big gear perfectly sits within the teeth on top, and on the bottom of the main tower here, this the circular turret, right? There's gear teeth on the top and the bottom, and as this main gear spins, it would rotate and control the yaw of the telescope tower. I saw this from like a concept art image on Google, and I thought that was a really cool mechanism that I wanted to try and recreate here. So the whole process of this was creating the main gears that would serve as the proponents that control the movement for the telescope tower. And then the next thing was to support those gears because they can't just be floating. So I added an axle down the middle of most of them, and then connected those to those kind of V-shaped wrought iron frames, right? You see that, and then from there, all I have to do is determine the power source. So we've got the ability to move, and then we need what powers that ability to move, and that's where the steampunk stuff comes into play. And I didn't really know what to do here, so I just connected a bunch of pipes and boilers and valves and compressors to other compressors and valves and pumps and boilers, and then I connected that to the gear and this little bubble thing at the end of the gear, so it looks like it powers it all, and it kind of makes sense a little bit. Like, there's just specific power and steam lines and pipelines you follow, and then the rest of that it's just up to your imagination, basically. And I mirrored that design on the other side of the tower, so it got a gear on either side and has a cohesive look, right? And then now we're going to detail the tower itself, and I knew I wasn't going to do brick for it because as a tower that hypothetically rotates, right, it would be way too heavy to move that. So right here I have it as the plaster, and I was going to have it mirror the timber framed walls and stuff on the rest of the from the other buildings in the area, right? So it would blend in, but it didn't look right with the plaster and the timber. So I opted for some metal framing, which mirrors it, but in this industrial style. So it made more sense for this building. And then I ended up changing the plaster entirely to the metal sheet, and that was ultimately the best option because it looked the best and it made the most sense. Especially when you look at it from certain angles, the sun shines off it just right, and then you can add the moss decals colored brown and red to make it look like rust, and I placed a lot of those, which you'll see in the live section. Decals galore on this build. Honestly, such a blast to build, and I'm really excited for you guys to see it. Now we're working on the main telescope part, and this was done like entirely with the aquatic set. And anyone who's done steampunk in this game knows the aquatic set is extremely versatile, but you just have to look at how you're going to use them, and combining that with these cogs and wheels, you can create complicated steampunk mechanisms like this one right here. So these upper gears, they don't do anything, but the lower gear is kind of similar to the gear at the bottom, which controls the yaw. That gear controls the pitch. Right now is my least favorite part of the entire build, just because it was such a pain to build. This is me trying to create a dome, and domes are not that difficult to make in this game, but this dome in particular was a pain in the, because not only is it a custom dome in of itself, it's gonna take a lot of time, but it's not symmetrical. As you can see, there is a divot down the middle, and that has to exist for the telescope to be able to fit in there and be able to rotate up and down, control the pitch. So because of that, the dome is like kind of squished. So if I were to push those two halves of the dome together, it wouldn't be a dome, it would be prolate, like a football, American football, or a rugby shape, right? And that was pretty difficult to make, I'm not gonna lie, and I know there's better ways to do it probably, and oh my god, I don't even like watching this part of the thing because oh my god, this took so long, man. And the way it turned out at the end, it's not bad. Like, if you look at it, you're not gonna look at it twice like, oh, that's bad. But just because I built it, I know that it kind of sucks. It's not very clean, the lines aren't straight, and this is the first attempt. I go back through it, which I cut out, and I make it look a little bit better. The cut's coming up pretty soon here. You'll see that it's no longer going to be tilted, it'll be somewhat level. But yeah, this was such a pain, and the fact that I chose those flange or flange pieces. Here's the cut, you see. It looks a lot cleaner, but it's still terrible. And those flange pieces that have the corners cut out left just holes that could not be filled, which was a little frustrating. But you know what? Sometimes you just gotta be a modern product designer, and you know, that's not a bug, that's a feature, right? So instead of fixing it, we're going to just patch it over with these metal support beams. We're just going to cover it like that, and your attention is drawn to those because it's such a vastly different color. You don't even care about the holes, you can't even see them. And this is one instance where the LOD issues of the game, like unrendering things, kind of comes in clutch, right? Because when it's blurred out, you can't see the holes. It all just blends together and looks like one metal sheet. So that's nice. These are the gear teeth that the cog on the central telescope wheel would like hypothetically rotate, and that would cause it to traverse laterally or vertically, I guess, across this this track here. And as you can see, I'm just trying to patch up the holes and make it make sense and like come together fully as like a observation telescope that's powered by large gears, mechanical movements, and steam power. And speaking of steam power, I placed a lot of pipes and generators and stuff everywhere, scaffolding, and I even have steam puffs like going off every couple seconds and stuff in various places. So the whole build feels very alive, and I'm really excited to show you guys it. So the time lapse is coming to a close here, and we're just gonna wrap up with some support pieces, some scaffolding, maintenance ladders and stuff, just to add the final bits of detail around the telescope tower. And yeah, and then we're just gonna hop into the final live section where I'll show off the final live section of the park. And it came together pretty well, so I'll see you guys in there. Alright, ladies and gents, we are here in the park for a final overview of what we've gotten up to in this episode. Your mom's house is still intact, don't worry. Sooner or later it'll get done. But I've added the main street sounds, and I'm just gonna silence my microphone here and walk through and let you guys experience the park.
L'amo è full a pet spero.
Alright, well, as you can see, it's pretty lively in here. On this side, you can see the contraptions connected to each saucer. It plays into the story. It's like some ornate flying craft that the people of this land use to travel between planets or something, right? And what are those? Those are gears, which kind of links it back to that area. Man, I was kind of skeptical at how this would turn out, because I mean, look, it's pretty like jarring. It's pretty different than everything else, right? The observatory. But I tried a lot of things to make it kind of match. I tried to throw in the gothic elements. So gothic elements just means gargoyles. No, but look at this entire front face. If this isn't gothic, then I don't know what is. And this section wasn't included in the time-lapse, so I thought I'd highlight it a little bit. This is like a true fusion of styles, right? It's got the gothicness of having tall gables, tall steep gables, pointed arches, columns, towers, and spires, and flying buttresses as well. And then it's got the steampunkiness of having like gears, moving parts, steam pressure pipes, lots of scaffolding, industrial feeling components, and a lot of asymmetry, which I really like to do. So that's the space. It kind of looks like Notre Dame a little bit. And here's the backstage, just kind of hidden behind everything else. Here is our restaurant, fully incorporated into the park. I have to say, I'm a huge fan of the tiered garden kind of area here. If we head inside, this is the trick I was talking about with the isolated section of path. And then when you place a staff member on it, they don't move at all. And that's what this part is too, in the kitchen. You see here, there's so many things just in here. It's making it look very busy. Whether it's the food prep station, the finishing station, the stove, croissants, extra trays, the storage tub, rolling locker thing, the fridge, the deep freezer that leads into the outside. Everything has a purpose here. The emergency supplies. One detail I made is the quick service things. These are the QR codes that you scan and then you order food on the apps, and then they'll just bring the food to you. That's the type of restaurant this is supposed to be. So all the tables will have a number. The bar spots have numbers as well. And speaking of the bar, let's check out the bar. I kind of reused an idea from last episode with the whole screen displaying a planet or something in the ceiling. But I felt it made more sense than in Starlight Manor because, well, it's the observatory. What are they observing? It's that. It kind of ties into this area in a unique way, whereas those are more like celestial bodies. This is more observing celestial bodies from Earth, so it's more grounded, it's more rooted, and that's the direction of this path, or this area of the park. That's where that's gonna go, and you can guess where the next area of the park is gonna go. This main street, it kind of represents a split or a divide. Here's this side, all fully detailed up with foliage and the rust decals and stuff. You can see into the bar from here. Again, with the quick service tables. You can see I was pretty deliberate with the rust decals. For instance, wherever I had a spout of steam, I like to include more rust. You know, it just makes sense because there's a lot of water there and moisture. So there's a lot of rust here because of the water there. All these industrial kind of like ventilation type things, they all have rust kind of like dripping down, making it look pretty old and stuff. And here, when the sunlight hits that metal wall, it looks really good with the rust, because the rust is not reflective, as you can see. And I tried to throw in the Gothic windows here, just to somewhat tie in the theme together. It's like loosely Gothic over here. Then I had to bring it all home with this section over here. So it's kind of like a greenhouse mixed with a church, mixed with a warehouse, mixed with an observatory, planetarium thing. I added the logo of the area to the main path. See how everything has got the little star with the star behind it pattern? First implemented in the Starlight Manor. Blackrock Basin had its logo. This area has its logo too. And what is it called? I've decided to call this area, the main street, the Astral Junction. And with that, I would like to thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure you leave a comment and leave a like, subscribe. Any of that would help, and shows me that you're excited for this series, because I am too, you know. As you can tell by the absurd amount of hours I put into this, but it all pays off in the end. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and as always, be on the lookout for the next one. Alright, take care. Bye bye.